Hello, welcome to this award ceremony. My name is Matthew Gudele, and I'm going to be giving the award for the most ruthless CEO in history, which goes to John D. Rockefeller. Many of you may have heard of him before. Let me go into detail of why he deserves this award. So John D. Rockefeller monopolized the oil industry in the late 1800s. He used intimidation and scare tactics to take over other companies and at one point literally collapsed the American economy to further his net worth. I first learned about him sophomore year of high school in history class, and I was just immediately fascinated by his crazy tactics and just how wealthy he became by essentially hurting others and other people's companies. So in 1863, Rockefeller entered the oil business. He started learning things, kind of had his own refinery, but then in 1870 is when he started Standard Oil. This is the famous company that just monopolized the entire United States. So he quickly took over the market, and he fluctuated prices in order to stay in control. What this means is that if another oil company started to kind of rise up, he would drop his prices so that they would go out of business because they just couldn't compete. His company would hurt, but it wouldn't go under because he was making so much money. And so by hurting both companies, he could stay alive while their company would just collapse because they didn't have the cash flow or infrastructure to be able to compete in that environment. This ruthless tactic made sure that he stayed in control and owned all the oil and the oil distribution for the entire United States. So he used horizontal integration, which means he was not only finding the oil, he was refining it, he was marketing it, he was selling it, transporting it, everything. He owned the entire process from the oil field to the oil getting into the households. And this is an extremely powerful situation to be in because when you own all of that integration, no one company can say or do or kind of change the way you do business because you decide all of it, you decide the prices, and you do anything to make yourself the most powerful person, which is exactly what John D. Rockefeller did. And so he died with a net worth of what would be equal to about $340 billion with a B today. This is so much more money than anyone else has ever had in their entire lifetime. Jeff Bezos today has a net worth of around $140 billion, and he is the owner of Amazon, and that is clearly not even half of what Rockefeller had. So to put that into perspective, that is an insane amount of money, and especially back then, that is just a ton of power. And he used this power to, as previously stated, literally collapse the American economy at one point. So thousands of people lost their jobs, companies failed, and he just sat back and his company hurt as well, but once again, he knew that his company could take the hit, and they did, and they rose back and continued their rampage. And so this led to the Sherman antitrust laws, which are still intact today, and what those do is prohibit companies from taking over an entire industry just like he did. So the American government literally made laws just for this one guy to stop his power because he just had too much influence over the United States economy. And so, as previously stated, thousands of people lost jobs, which just shows how ruthless he was because he didn't care about them and their families. He just cared about his money, his company, and staying on top. So, in order to be the most ruthless CEO, my award has some qualifications. The first of which is that the CEO needs to own a legit company. So they need to, pay taxes, and they can't, be a drug lord or anything, run some underground sketchy operation. And as ruthless as Rockefeller's company was, Standard Oil did play by the books. They were definitely mean in the way they did business, but it was a legit company, and that is why they were able to raise to the top and then stay in control once they were there. The CEO also needs to hurt others for his or her benefit. And so there's some other CEOs out there, such as Tillman Fertitta, and he basically owns a bunch of restaurants, and he's infamous for being super controlling, super rude, and just caring about money. But even he doesn't compare to Rockefeller and just how ruthless he was, how much he didn't care about others. And this showed in his company, his net worth, and the way that he personally did business. So he basically would be extremely intimidating, but they said that he was a pleasant man to deal with if you had nothing to do with business. So just walking down the street, you could hold a normal conversation with him and he'd be a nice guy. But if you were trying to sell oil or do something, he's not someone you wanted to mess with, or his company. And so, in conclusion, he was a CEO that was willing to hurt others to gain money and power for himself. He outdid all other ruthless CEOs in history, and he monopolized the entire industry, which is now illegal because of his practices. He destroyed and bought many other companies just to stay in control. He didn't care about others losing their jobs, and US laws banned him and his company from doing business the way they did. So, to put this into perspective, imagine if gas nowadays was $50 a gallon. Right, that sounds outrageous because it's anywhere from $3 to $5 depending on where you live in the United States. But if one company owned all of the gas that was for our cars and oil and things for just houses, then they could charge whatever they wanted. And that is exactly what Rockefeller did. They don't care about their consumers, about their well-being, about other companies. They just care about making money. And so that is exactly what Rockefeller did. That is why he was so ruthless and why his practices made him the most ruthless CEO in history. Thank you.